So we have a session on interoperable digital financial service for credit unions, and our panelist is our Faith Kobsinje. Can you present yourself and the tremendous work you're doing in Rwanda, please? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Faith Kobsinje Mgambwa. I work with the Ministry of Finance, heading a project that is digitizing circles. Rwanda has over 400 circles, but the main ones, which are basically established under a policy that government set up in place. When Rwanda says that it's going to become a middle-income country by 2030, then questions around, so how do we achieve this, begin to happen. And one of the questions was, do we have the top tier of population growing and saving and developing and growing assets and building houses, and the rest of the bottom of the pyramid are left behind? No, then we will not qualify as a middle-income country by 2030. So key initiatives, one of them being that in every village, there has got to be a circle. And so that's how come we have 416 circles. And so I've been privileged to run a project where we had to sit down and come up with, from the ground up, a core banking system that will be used by all these circles, because it was not economically viable for them, like any bank, to go and buy a system off the shelf. So we went to universities in Rwanda, picked up engineers. We went to banks and looked for people that are willing to live the comfortable life and try to risk their lives to build a core banking system. Successfully, we've been able to automate all the 416 circles, and now the interoperability question becomes the next big why and how. So yeah, at this point, we are now setting up a framework through which the 416 can be condensed down to 30. Why 30? Because that means every village is consolidated into a branch of the district. So just like you have a bank that is, I don't know, Equity Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, Stanbic Bank, Lloyds Bank, whichever bank you have a head office seated somewhere, and they have branches. So in our case, the structure is, let us have a head office at the district, and all the village circles become branches. But the circles at the village root are owning the infrastructure, the setup, and they still have shares at the district level. And so that means that from a customization level, from a system level, from a business rules level, we are building something that works for the people, owned by the people, used by the people, to drive an agenda that says, when we compute our level of growth to qualify as a middle-income country, indeed, we have come from point A to point B, which is why, if you look at statistics, for example, from FinScope study, 2014, we were at 48% financial exclusion, financial inclusion, whichever side of the slice you look at. But by 2024, we've now come to 95% financial inclusion. And those marks and markers are actually measured down to the grassroots. It's not high media, high level, popularization. No, these are numbers that you can actually follow through down to the grassroots and can be explained. And so it has been my privilege, and it's still my privilege, to work with the Ministry of Finance in getting that project off the ground.
Thank you, Faith. Mr. Kodua, as a Chief Executive Officer of Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies, how digitization is happening there? What is the status? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And anytime you move outside the jurisdiction of Ghana and you ask savings and loans companies. Most people think that it is the SACCO, but this is the higher level because the savings and loans companies within the Ghanaian financial architecture is the second-tier banking institutions. So when you come to Kenya, it's like the 3 or 4 microfinance banks, and you have the deposit taking. So they do everything as commercial banks except forex transactions. And to be honest with you, over the past few years, the adoption of digitalization has been so dramatic and so inspiring. Why? As we speak now, almost all the institutions within that framework have actually put up systems that their customers do not need to walk to their branches to transact. Prior to about 7 years ago, institutions were actually chasing the building of branches. But now that has reduced drastically because of the adoption of digital platforms. And with our local infrastructure, those of you who are familiar with the payment space within Ghana, you see that a lot of things are going on with mobile money. Some of our institutions are actually partnering with the mobile money operators to advance credits, deposit mobilization, reaching out to the villages. And to be honest with you, one of them, unfortunately the CEO is even in this room, they transact on this digital platform, granting loans to not less than 34,000 people a day. 34,000. And they reach out to more than 1.2 million people. So this is to tell you the extent that Ghana is going, especially within the space that we speak here.
Thank you so much. Mr. Yuri, you present yourself to the audience and you tell us about the tremendous work you're doing as a practitioner in a core banking and payment implementation across Africa and Southeast Asia.
Thank you so much, Manzi. It is a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so my name is Yuri Walter. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Resilient Payment Systems, East Africa Limited. We are a financial inclusion company. That is how we like to introduce ourselves. Myself, I call myself financial inclusion ninja. So if you check my bio on LinkedIn, you will see a ninja there fighting for financial inclusion. Now, in my 10 years experience, more than 10 years experience in terms of financial inclusion, people sing, people dance, people run, talk about financial inclusion. Here in Kenya, we are so happy when we are talking about financial inclusion, we mention M-Pesa. The interesting thing is that M-Pesa is actually a tremendous success, and it is being emulated globally by this is a telco around the globe, yeah? But when we talk financial inclusion, again, in the case of Kenya, you find that majority of these Kenyans who actually are onboarded on M-Pesa, the secondary account, the major one, is actually the credit union. Majority of them are actually in the credit union. Now, this is what has motivated myself and our team to actually champion this. So at Resilient, we do implement a full-fledged systems for the SACCOs that is coming from a shared core banking system, shared payment infrastructure from the mobile banking and internet banking. We were privileged to do this in the Philippines, and it was actually a tremendous project in terms of we have to automate 22,000 credit unions in the Philippines. Yeah, provide them a shared core banking system, managing the loans, managing the savings, the shares, and of course, integrating the payment. We had to also connect to the national payment system through integrating additional switch, connecting ATMs, connecting the POS, or what we call a PDQ. And then finally, we had to incorporate, because of the challenge in terms of the cost of implementing system for the credit union. They are not that moneyed compared to major banks. So we had to come up with a proprietary card system for the members of the cooperative. So they have their own card that they can actually transact with. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Faith. Digitizing those credit unions, those circles from the village or sector level, what are the challenges you saw, and what can we learn from the presentation we saw today, and what, like, Mojarup community can do to empower you as implementer of such systems? It's really loaded, but try to
unload it.
Yes, thank you.
Unbundle it. Yeah, so what are the challenges? I think walking into this project, for me, initially, mark you, this is a project that had started in 2017. And by 2023, government had reached a point where they were thinking, let's just shut this thing down, right? So I'm borrowing Walter's words. Being the ninja that I am, I think I walked into it a bit blind of the reality. And the problems are not technology problems. The problems that a lot of these cooperatives or small credit unions have are issues around governance, data, because we had to actually do data entry, data collection from the ground up. Like, what's your name, date of birth, put in an Excel sheet. That wasn't working. No, let's follow another method. What's your national ID? Can we fetch the information from the national ID and pre-populate it on our side? Good. Okay, so you have an account. You know, like from the ground up. And to do this meant going to the grassroots villages and having to teach people how to type, how to use a computer, how to switch on a computer, how to think that, okay, when you put information in the computer, it doesn't go away. You don't need to come back and start again the next day from scratch. So a lot of these things that we were challenged with were not things of the technology per se. There were things to do or barriers to do with levels of education, levels of competence. Is the person that you are working with competent enough to do the work? And at some point, because I was given very tight deadlines, in Rwanda when we have KPIs, it's not a joking subject. It's something that we'll discuss at another time. But anyway, so I had the challenge to work with the team that I was given to run a close-by date within less than 12 months. And what that meant was going to entities like the Ministry of ICT and saying, I would like to borrow resources to scatter them across the country, do digital education, to do financial literacy, to establish clear identification. Are these people really who they say they are? And so the next layer after that was the layer of infrastructure. So you've connected a branch or a district or a village through VPN. They don't have electricity. Or at least the power, the national grid is not stable. Now you get into things of generators. So now I'm being asked, what type of generator we buy? I never studied engineering. I'm a ninja for what? Financial inclusion. But now someone is asking you, what type of generator should we buy, right? You have to go look for spec of generators. People can't afford the generators. I need to find someone to buy generators for 69 villages. Then now you're looking at development finance. You've moved away from what you said. So you find yourself dealing with layers and layers and layers of challenges. And the interesting thing about it is that when you have a shared goal and a shared vision, and there's empowerment around it to say, this is something we need to have, it is not a maybe, we must have it done, then people pull resources quickly to a common point. The other part then that started coming in was, okay, all of you are using Gmail to access a system. What if your Gmail is hacked? I will approve a transaction because a manager in a branch deep in a village sent an email. Now I'm training managers, guys, do not share passwords. So you're going through different struggles, and it gets to a point where now you have to show the local citizenry that their finances are safe. Customer deposits are safe. The central bank wants to know that everybody's money is where it is as you claim it to be. So you're audited by the Auditor General's office. You have to answer to different, so in the execution of a goal, why I said I walked into it blind, and maybe that was the good thing about it, is that you're just looking at the end goal and you're like, whatever happens, I'm getting there, right? And the technology then had to evolve with what it is we needed to get done. So if, no, this screen is not working right, let's change it. These people can't read, so let's not use complicated, can we put it in vernacular? Can it be in a local language? Can we use widgets? I call my dev tech team ninjas, because I'll wake up one morning and say, you know what, guys, the team in the other, village are more agriculture oriented than trade. And so the loan you gave them is computing interest at a wrong methodology. Change it, and I want it ready tomorrow. If I was to call T24 or Finaco, not to trap, if I was to call a company in, I don't know where, to say I need a change on a core banking system, I would get it in 6 months. But people are able to run quite fast enough because they are here to deliver for the common good of all of us. And we've done interesting things, we've done amazing things, and the next layer or the next question or the next why is, so how come someone who came from the southern province, traveled to the city, is not able to walk into a branch of a SACCO in the city and withdraw money? And I'm telling them, so would someone in Barclays walk into Equity and withdraw money like he was in his branch in Barclays? Like, no, that doesn't matter. You guys are, why? Because we have a shared core banking system. Why? Because government has built this system, so make it happen. And so, to your question of how can Moja Loop help, I turn the guns to and say, so how do you make this happen? How do you make the impossible? What is they say it's impossible until it's done. How do we make this impossible happen and keep it as light at the front-end user interface, as light as possible, while the rest of the iceberg is under the water, which means how do we do real-time settlement, real-time balancing, real-time auto-reconciliation, real-time authentication. If Faith walked into a branch where her KYC is sitting in another licensed financial institution, how do we serve this person without having to ask her for 100 things? The system should be able to do these things. And so for me, where we come in and say, okay, so as Moja Loop, how do we leverage your core competence, your experiences, your learnings to make your years of growth a 29-second flip for us? Because that's the speed at which Rwanda is running at. And being able to pull these things off is not just with the lightness of, oh, wow, but being able to say, do we comply with the laws? Do we have consumer protection at the end of it? Do we have clear data sharing, compliance, data hosting? Do we meet the regulation in as far as governance is concerned, in as far as, connecting into the wider DPI of the country as it is. So it's not just about execution for the good of it or for the heck of it, but also making sure that the key stakeholders, who is the central bank, who is the Ministry of Finance, are comfortable that what we are building is definitely protecting the end user. So safe payments become a question. real-time payments, instant payments, irrevocable payments. We speak about things like irrevocability. I was talking about this with Steve. I was like, it's a very thin line for us. We think, of course, it's an irrevocable transaction. But for people who are in the village, if I have been debited and the other party has not been credited, and I'm supposed to walk out with a bag of rice, and the other party says, no, we are going to go hungry. So an irrevocable transaction is a big deal for someone who is in the far remote areas. And we have no time to say, there was a timeout issue, no one wants to understand the story, right? So for me, when we look at, okay, so how can we leverage, what can we pick up, what can we draw from, the Moja Loop community, is how can I fetch the wealth, the growth, the multitude of things that have happened in different places in Kenya, in Ghana, and just go plug, not copy-paste, customize at speed of light, and run. Because that's the ask we've been given. I hope I've unbundled your question.
Thank you so much. Brilliantly, actually. Yuri, what was the main challenges you faced while implementing the solutions across Southeast Asia and Kenya?
Well, I think somehow the challenges are looking common. I wanted to avoid so much in terms of what Faith is saying. One of the challenges is actually interoperability. She said something that she actually took out from my mouth in terms of Yuri goes to Kisumu. His bank main branch is actually here in Upper Hill, and he wants to withdraw money. How do you give him service without telling him, you have to go to your branch, they can help you? So that was one of the biggest challenge. And in this case, I actually explained with the Philippines. They have a lot of circles, as I've said, around 23,000 of them, with almost around 15 million people. Now, these people are moving around the country. They want access of their money. They don't have that advantage compared to let me say East Africa in terms of we have mobile money. So for them, it is lining either ATM, you either go to the teller, that is your branch, or you get your money in terms of mobile money, but it is not, you cannot withdraw it. So that was the biggest challenge. And the biggest task was basically how can this customer, the KYC process, they withdraw their money from a bank or an institution that is not where his data reside. So it was a bit of a challenge for us. But what we did with shared core banking is that it has a central database. So all this information is actually pulled. So for example, if Yuri walks in, he either presents his account number or his national ID, and the teller is actually going to get the KYC information for Yuri, and then they will proceed to actually withdraw or do a deposit. And of course, the interesting part that happens also to the benefit of the financial institution, there is the aspect of fee sharing when a service has actually been done across this institution. So you find that in the Philippines now, the interoperability, and of course the issue of that we face that no, I'll wait tomorrow, it is now late, I cannot get money. As Faith has said, you're not going to go home with maybe the rice that you're buying because the issue that you need to go to your bank. So we were able to eradicate that in the Philippines, and that is one of the major achievements that personally I'm proud of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Koduo. I want to ask you a question particularly on KYC and the interoperability. You also touch on challenges. Probably you have particular challenges in Ghana for that tier 2 kind of banking, but also do emphasize on, do you have a shared KYC system? How is some other compliance systems like anti-money laundering or others are done in your ecosystem? Thank you.
Thank you very much. When you come to Ghana, we have a very fragmented financial system, of which the current conversation has to do with how do we bring these institutions together? How do we bring about synergy? How do we go about the issue of sharing data? And the central bank has actually issued out open banking exposure draft, which means that very soon we're going to issue out a directive on open banking. And this actually thrives at the back of sharing data. And it has to do with the quality of the data that you are holding. So for the past few years, we have started enforcing the use of the common identifier, that's the national ID, which now, per our legal regulations or the legal structure, it is only the national ID that is a legal document for you to have access to all financial services. So we're going to build at the back of that system. As it stands now, the institutions do not have shared platform where they are able to tap into the other data. But that is something that we are working towards. And that is why we think that this Moja Loop project is very dear to us, so that all the thousands, so far we have more than 1,000 non-bank institutions in the country. At the last count, you had about 495 credit unions. You have about those who are enterprises, who about 1,000 of them as well. And then the rural banks, you have about 146. Then you have the savings and loans, finance houses, and the microfinance companies also making up the numbers, which make it quite cumbersome. But with the support of the current regulator, the central bank, we are working to bring all these non-bank institutions together so that we can have clean data, as well as building confidence within the space. And that is why, for us, we think that you can't get it right if you don't work together. And so the association, with its leadership, they are leading the charge so that everybody comes around the table to say, it is not in your interest to work in silos, but rather let's come around the table and see what specifically work for us. Again, you realize that one challenge that has to do with why we are not getting it right in most of the jurisdictions has to do with the usage of the data that we gather from the people. For instance, can you imagine if we are able to mine the data well? For instance, the mobile money data of a customer, the merchants, how they are using it to transact. We can use it to even design the appropriate credit score for the customer. You don't need to let the customer have an account with you, and some of our institutions currently are doing it in Ghana. Another challenge that we need to deal with has to do with, and I'm happy that most of the jurisdictions, this process is being championed by the government itself and the regulator. And I think that makes it a bit easier for you to implement. And so that is also the conversation we're currently having to make sure that the regulator, then the government, we all come to a common point where the vision is very clear for us to push the agenda. But it's very clear that that is the future for inclusivity and, for that matter, to grow access to finance to our customers.
Thank you so much. I think I need to ask also Yuri about the data, because Faith have said about the data quality and the challenges around it in other markets. the data quality was also a problem there?
In the case of the Philippines, data was not an issue. So this data was readily available. One thing that we noticed is that they are a bit connected in terms of human data in the Philippines. So it is easily accessed from integration from the government side. So you can integrate it when you are doing your KYC. So for example, when Yuri is actually onboarding, because what they are doing there is that they onboard through internet banking or mobile banking. So you don't need to walk into the to a branch. So in terms of the quality authenticated data, that one was actually not an issue. With the support from here in Kenya, we call it IPRS, where we get the information, personal data of the person that is actually signing up. So that one was not a challenge. However, a different scenario, though, I'm hoping that maybe to hand it over back to you, maybe if you're going to ask that question, the issue of fraud. Fraud is actually a major issue there. And I would even encourage my colleagues to actually consider that. A very interesting case that was brought to us. And we ponder that case, where I was actually, used to tell them that in our practice, we can identify the thief, and then we are going to tell you how, we are going to hand them over to you, and then you're going to handle them. Now, in this case was basically a teller is the one that has actually committed a fraud. Their credentials log into the system, a teller does a transaction and transfer that money to, in their country, that is what we call GCash. So they move that money. The same applies to here in Kenya, for example, the many fraud cases that we've had. So a SACCO money is moved from a SACCO account, a SACCO closed system. They move it to mobile money, and that money is gone. It's gone, you are not going to get it back. When you go to your financial institution, they tell you, go to the police. Get an abstract, report it so that they investigate, which never happens. So in the case of, in that case, in the Philippines, organization lost money with the access of a teller. They don't share this information, but we came to find out in terms of, as Faith has said, you find that the email that the users of the systems are using are actually accessible, can be accessed. We can guess, like for example, you see my name, Yuri Walter. You can go to Gmail and try Yuri Walter at Gmail, and maybe it works. And then now you start doing some phishing in terms of getting me to input things in terms of data so that you can access. So that is actually the biggest challenge, handling that fraud. On the aspect of also the card and the switching side of it. And this is where I'm actually keen and looking forward in terms of what Mojaloop is actually presenting, especially on the switching aspect. We were also seeing there is a lot of fraud card related. Mind you, these are actually what I would call proprietary card. So because they are not able to work with the Visa and MasterCard because of that fee in terms of just joining. So we came up with a proprietary card, an EMV card, just the same. The only different thing is that it is not Visa and it is not MasterCard. So that one also, there is a fraud in it. And you find that the switches that are there, maybe not to mention them by name, is actually allowing these kind of frauds to actually happen. So that is what the institution were complaining, and they were asking us, how can we solve this issue of fraud? So fraud is a major issue, not in the Philippines, not here in Kenya, and I want to assume also maybe Rwanda and also Ghana, they're experiencing a fraud issue. So for me, I would want to go a notch higher, especially here when we are talking as a Mojaloop community. What best can we do as far as fraud is concerned?
Let me ask that question to Kodua.
Quickly, I would say that we need to share practices among ourselves on the platform on continuous basis. We don't need to wait till we convene before some of these things are shared, because these things are very live. And as you share the occurrence of these things, it actually brings more ideas as to how we fight it. If you look at Ghana, we report them to the central bank, but you know that generally and globally, not all bankers are willing to easily just share such reports. Sometimes they are looking at the reputation and all those things. But it is in our interest to report. But is it possible that we report it within the community such that all community members are able to have access to that database, not specifically the name of the customer, but the events and what each person would have done or they are doing? Or sometimes you also have to look at what legal framework need to also be put in place in those particular jurisdictions. Sometimes the judicial system itself will frustrate you, so it's better you don't even pursue it. So these are some of the things we need to learn among ourselves and look at a common framework or platform that will share these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Kodo. Faith, have you experienced fraud cases in your implementation so far? I can say by the look. How was it? How can we help mitigate it?
Well, have we incurred or come across fraud? Of course. Like in my little French, we say, "Mais oui, bien sûr," and I stop there. I don't have any more French after that. What can we do to? What can we do to? I have to keep you guys awake, eh? Yeah. So what can we do to improve or mitigate this? And I think for us, it is the shared capabilities. Coming down to say, look, how do I make what I've built stronger and watertight? How do I future-proof it? Listening to someone who has done 23,000 circles, we're talking about 400 circles. There are definitely lessons learned. I'm surprised. Well, when he said the story of someone, a tailor commit, I'm like, we do this every day. We have the same repetitive, same. So human beings are human beings. But then how do we learn? What have you done better? How can I make mine better? And so it's that shared capability or shared learnings where we are able to come in and say, okay, you're doing what I'm doing. You're probably doing it in a different way, but I need to be able to learn from you and go back and, improve. Or, look, I don't have the bandwidth to address this. Do you have something I can borrow to improve the source in my house? I grew up in a time when Africans used to send, my mother would send you to the neighbor and say, ask for salt and a tablespoon of cooking oil. From the neighbor, like you were sent to borrow salt and cooking oil because we have to cook lunch at home. So if the food in my house needs to taste better, I will say, Charlotte, can you lend me a tomato from your house so that I can cook the food in my house better? I may not have, or we may not have the ability to go buy a solution. We've built this thing from the ground up. Can we get money to buy or to build another? Do I have bandwidth to get other engineers to do business rules for fraud monitoring? No. But guess what? Maybe someone somewhere has a platform, has a solution, has a system. Is it good enough, like 70% capable, to layer on top of my tech stack so that it fulfills basic initial rules? And then let my people learn, and we build it from there, and we make it more organic as we go. So does Ghana have something I can borrow? Is it open source? Is it available? Are you guys friends? Are we able to? We do have, Rwanda and Ghana have a We have a digital passport thing. So what are we even talking about here, right? These guys have done the work. Why should I do the same work? Rwanda and Uganda and Ghana have already built a collaboration around exporting digital passports. So just we need to say, when are you guys available? Can we come on this day? Good. When can you come and visit us? Good. XYZ, what are the legal paperworks? Help me improve mine. Because then, as a community, we can become better without spending as much effort, right? And working in silos to compete. We can collaborate across borders, across markets, and say, the Ghana experience, the Ghana use case, the Ghana customer profile is pretty much similar to mine. So chances are, I may not be sure about Philippines, but let me go here, right? And pick this, layer it on top of my tech stack. Does it work? Great. We move from there. And as we go along, then there's a cross-pollination of ideas, there's a cross-pollination of training, learning, and you never know, there could be things that were probably never thought about that come from Rwanda and go back to Ghana to improve the Ghana use case. So I'm a firm believer in the synergies that can be leveraged when we hold hands than leave me to run my distance, my mile alone. If we hold hands, I bet in this room I would be able to pick like 70% of solutions that would fix my future problems. Not even current, my future problems as someone running a core banking system. So whether it's hardware, network, the whole, application development, there are many things, licensing, writing of policies. Some of these things are not documented. If I hired an engineer and he leaves tomorrow, the next person who comes doesn't know the head and the tail of what we were doing. So how are we documenting? There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, and I don't have to do it all on my own for everything. There are things I can come to Moja Loop and say, do you have people who can do this? Yes. Have they done it before? Yes. Bring them, let's work together. And so for me, that's where I think, to the question of fraud, but even other things, we are able to work better.
As a community?
As a community.
Thank you. As a community, working together is much, much, much better, as I've learned from all of you. Now, the next step. Beyond that exchange, I have a question for Faith. Because it's a unique case, they built the core banking by themselves. It's working. What are the particular needs for a Moja Loop community on that system you built? Is there any functionality, use case, you think that people in this room or who were there in the morning can solve that single problem you've faced so far as a Moja Loop community?
So the question is there anything we can pick from the Moja Loop community?
Yes. System or community, anything. But
a learning we can take or an
yes.
ask we can take.
Yeah.
Where do I start? Like, do we have time? So, I mean, if I look at the hardware level, how can we do stronger networking that is efficient for last mile without heavy capex? I don't know if I'm speaking it right.
Yes.
I'm not a techie. I wasn't trained in IT. But I'm going to. So for me, the question I have is, do I have to keep buying more servers to accommodate these different entities? Is there a way I can do it better? Is there a way we can have a far more safe connection processing capacity to make sure that we have instant processing? we do have certain cases where people are in a queue in a remote branch, and they're telling you that the computer is thinking. You know that thing that happens? The machine is thinking, right? Because between my VPN and the branch, there's a latency. So how do we get someone from here that can fix that for me, right? And those are not things that are overnight questions. I talked about documentation and IT process, IT policies. IT policies, not for the circles, but for this thing we've built, where is it going to sit? So from a governance standpoint, how do we layer it? And I know we've talked about from the Moja Loop community, the different things about the governance frameworks and the governance structures that can be, we do have the same, but how do we institutionalize it to the point that it's effective, not just on paper, but in practice? So if a loan is going over the single obligor limit of one entity, how does that impact the rest? Then there are questions about dashboards, liquidity, management, because at the end of the day, if I'm going to connect, our next milestone is I'm hoping that the next Moja convention, we will come as members of the community. But anyway, if we connect as direct participants to the national settlement switch, how can we best manage our liquidity? Because for SACCOs, if you ask them to put 2 million as pre-funding, with an opportunity cost of, I could lend this money to my members, the guys will be like, you know what? Keep your what? Keep your instant payments for us. It makes more sense to lend to our members. So how do we creatively address liquidity to avoid those problematic things of reputation, of, the money ran out, of, how do we fix this thing of liquidity management? I'm coming from IT, coming all the way upwards. And then comes the question or the elephant of in-house solution vis-a-vis off-shelf or bought, meaning we've built this thing, we have a maximum knowledge base container. How do we widen it? Is it training? Is it certification? Is it hiring new people? If we're hiring them, who pays them? Is it getting a new set of engineers for certain functionalities like AI usage and things like that? Do we even need it? Because like the gentleman from the central bank this morning was saying, what are we trying to solve? Because we could try to boil the ocean when the problem, our problem is not a problem of wallet to account, which we tried to force. When you force informal sector into formal, it goes like yogurt. So, we try to make SACCOs have account to wallet integrations. And we were thinking they'll do more pool account to wallet transactions. It turned out they were doing more wallet to account transactions, meaning they would go to the agents, do trade, load money, and push it to the SACCO. If they're paid, they want the money on their SACCO account, not the other way around. So we noticed that we were building something from a satellite city mind and not a rural mind. So some of these things around the business rules and developing of business rules and the QA and the fine-tuning of these things to make them sustainable enough that they can outlast us to the point that they do definitely transform lives in the long run. So we need to be able to say, how good is our documentation? How strong are our policies? How well are they understood? So that when we finally get to the end of it, let's say we have a beautiful cooperative bank formed, it is as competitive as tier 1 banks, because that's where we're heading. We are heading towards the formation of a cooperative bank where we don't want to just have it on paper. It should stand out just like the next tier 1 bank on the street and call its shots the way it should. But do we have all the answers? No. Do we have all the resources? No. is there a community of people that we can pin down and get, I've been told by some of the people I've been meeting here, you should talk to these guys, you should talk to these guys, you should talk to Ethiopia. So I'm like, okay. And that tells me that some of the things that we're keeping ourselves awake all night trying to figure out are available in the room, and they can be cross-cutting from as simple or as complex as network engineering to as plain text as writing in English a policy that is clear, crisp, concise, enabling for interoperability, safe payments that will last not just for today, but there for tomorrow and the future generations.
Thank you, Faith. It was a long response, but thank you. I can say it loud. It was an ambiguous question. Kodua, what is your last word to the audience?
I will say this is a great platform for us to interact, for us to learn from each other, and for us to reach the last mile. We need everybody around the table. One thing that I've learned through this community has to do with some environment, within some environment, you have the regulators willing to adjust to issue out directives or policies or anything to suit the specific needs that needs to be solved. And I must applaud those governments and those regulators. Let us move away from here, going back to implement things that will enable us achieve the last mile. Again, consumer protection, the issue of money laundering, the issue of AI. As I heard this morning when the minister, the Kenyan minister, the payment system director at the CBK mentioned that now Kenya has passed this regulation on virtual assets. Ghana, for instance, we have issued out the directive. We're going to start their licensing from 3rd November. So applications are going to start coming in to the central bank. So let's be proactive. Let's look at the future of the industry, and let's all come together and support each other. And I'm very confident that the last mile will be achieved sooner than later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kodo. Yuri, your last word?
For me, my last word is I would say that if you're talking about financial inclusion and you are avoiding the last mile, that is not financial inclusion. That is not financial inclusion. That is a different agenda that is actually packaged on financial inclusion. And on the Moja Loop community that happen to have been a member for quite some time, and in terms of the Moja Loop system, I would encourage that we also focus on the side of the credit union, the microfinance bank. I know Moja Loop is evolving in terms of strategy, but there is those of us that actually have that experience and knowledge working with the microfinance bank and the credit union that we would also want to see them adopting. Why am I saying this? Majority of the switches that is going to be implemented connecting to the national switch, if it is not Moja Loop, it is a commercial switch. Now, telling a cooperative or a credit union to pay for that switch in terms of subscription, it is a lot of money. And so, if we have willing members of the community, I myself volunteer myself in terms of taking up that opportunity, in terms of working with the credit union, coming up with something that is going to help them. So that together, as we are talking financial inclusion, we also talk in terms of we can share numbers that in Rwanda, There is 400 and something SACCOs, and it has almost, let's say, 11 million people. These people are impacted in terms of in what way, in terms of the switch that we've implemented. There are credit unions that basically the income they are getting is channeled to the vendor, majority of it. They are not investing back in terms of providing their members the right solution for the services. So for me, I would advocate that as you are leaving this panel today, take an initiative, regardless of which department is the organization you are representing, especially, as we call it in the global south, champion financial inclusion. And financial inclusion solves a lot of problems, from suicide to all the challenges in terms of domestic violence. It all goes back to Yuri not having money. And maybe his wife at home says, tomorrow we are supposed to go out. Yeah? So let's champion financial inclusion and make this world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience to be patient. Do you have any question for my panelists?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My name is Nicholas Kalunja. I'm from Uganda. The discussion has been very detailed, and the panelists have been on point. We, the people following, have also been on point, following keenly. Now, Faith, at the start of your discussion, you talked about something, I know it's over 1 hour ago. You talked about something about the circles from top to bottom, district level going down. I want to understand, from an innovator point of view, are the circles in Rwanda owned by the government or owned by private players? And if the answer is yes, how does that affect fintech innovators? I thank you.
Okay, so SACCOs are owned by members. Meaning, let's say in a village, we in a village come together, we form a SACCO. To form that SACCO, we need capital. So all of us buy shares. We contribute and we write down. Yuri has 50 shares worth X, Faith, like that. That's the capital we go to the central bank and represent and say, this is our starting capital. We here are the members. We've elected by meeting through a Constituent General Assembly. Olivier is our chairman. He will be vetted by the central bank for fit to serve. If he goes through the screening process and they say he has a record in CRB, he did not pay his loan, they will tell us and we have to go and say, okay, we vote the Honorable Kodo as our new chairman. With a chairman, now we go and hire an MD. MD then starts. What government is doing is to say, you may not have the money to pay the MD, for example. So government will come in and say, for the first 1 year, we will pay the MD's salary. So that the members here can grow to the point where we are lending to ourselves, we are saving, we are depositing, we are growing. By that time, my salary as the MD plus Charlotte's salary plus who is the finance and accountant plus one tailor, we have grown to a point where we can absorb those costs. Now, that's the grassroots circle. The cooperative law in Rwanda says, if we are going to consolidate these village circles into a cooperative at the district, it is the village owners down who vote legally to dissolve their legal capacity and become members of a new district circle called Kampala District Circle. And we now reevaluate our shares. We now re-note how many shares does each one of us have now that we have combined ourselves with 20 other village circles to form a new company. At that level, again, we've dissolved his chairmanship of this circle. We need a new chairman for our district. We again go into voting, there's campaigns and the whole 9 yards. Central bank will again vet do these people serve the purpose? Are they fit for service? Yes or no? So government's ownership in this is zero. What government is doing is saying there's a cost of technology you will not carry with your current performance and your current profitability. You will not afford. So that is being carried as a cost to the government through the Ministry of Finance as an accompanying measure in getting digitized, right? At some point, we will have to then again evaluate and say, this core banking system is now worth, and put it on someone's books. Right now, it's sitting in government's books as an asset. For fintechs, every day I have people knocking at my door. I'm a fintech in transport. I want to provide a service to members. I want to integrate with the core banking system. We are doing integrations every day. Insurance companies are coming up. So our doors are open because we are a public good. As far as the Ministry of Finance is concerned, we are a public good. If the members tell me that they want a service, me as the head of the project, I can't say no. They write it, they vote for it, they send us a resolution, we build it. So we've had all sorts of questions, we've had all sorts of demands coming in, and all we do is assign time and engineers to do customizations. So we've had, to your question, fintechs from the agriculture space, from the credit scoring space, from the informal circles, informal groups, CBBNA space. For us, all we do is say we need bandwidth, and that's why I was saying that from the Moja community, if there's room for someone to come and sit with us and say, we'll give you an engineer to do interoperability while you fix these other monkeys that are shouting around in terms of everybody is making noise, right? Because priority has to be, who do you solve for, when, how, why? I have to have a clear demand from the members. So government doesn't step into demand, determine. It's their business, it's their circle. We are just the owners or sitting on the customer, on a public good that has to work for them.
Yeah.
What happens to
The share.
what happens to the shared capital? At what level? At what level? At the district level or at the group level?
Sorry.
Yeah, we've run out of time.
Yes. No,
Yes.
sorry. What I was saying, people buy the shares.
Yes?
You go to the government and say, the central bank, and say, we have this share capital.
Yes.
And the central bank says, yes, okay, I accept that. Where does the share capital go?
So within their operations, like we don't have reserves and things like that. So basically, they onward lend to each other, but there's of course questions around liquidity, sticky capital, sticky money and then yeah. So it's capital structuring. We go through that whole process with them, training as well, and also looking at opportunities to make it better, so that they are not just too liquid, but effective at the end of the day. So we collaborate with commercial banks in this space because of prudential and licensing aspects.
So I'm afraid my question was simpler than that. It's, but I think you've answered it. It's the money is deposited at a commercial bank.
Yes.
That was my question. Thank you.
One of the ways is yes, but thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm told my time has elapsed. Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience. Thank you, everyone.